Hey guys, we're going to be doing something a little different here on the channel today. We're going to be taking a look at a video that tries to debunk a review of Superman by James Gunn. To put my own cards on the table here, I'm a big fan of Superman in general, and I would not say I'm a giant fan of this movie, but hear me out on this. I like the movie. I enjoyed watching it. I've watched it a couple times since, and I had fun with it. But at the same time, I don't think it's very good. And I know that might sound weird to people. Like, how can you like a movie that you think is bad? Well, I mean, I like watching Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and I really enjoy watching Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, and most people consider those movies bad, and I consider at least Batman Forever to have a lot of problems, and Batman and Robin to just be terrible. But I still like them. I have fun with them while recognizing that they're not very well-made movies and they have really bad scripts, especially Annihilation. Basically, what I'm saying is, I think I can look at Superman with a bit of objectivity because I think it's bad, but I like it. So I'm not against the movie, and I'm also not a fanboy of the movie. Now, the original video is by a YouTube creator called LittlePlatoon, who I'm a fan of, so I'll admit that right out. I think he makes really good videos, and I think his criticisms are usually pretty spot on. I don't agree with him 100% of the time, but who are we ever going to agree with 100% of the time anyways? The debunk of LittlePlatoon's video is coming from a YouTube creator called SK. I don't really know a lot about him. I know he does a lot of reviews of superhero stuff, especially Spider-Man. I like his little derpy Spider-Man avatar. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. I came across this video while I was searching for some other stuff, and I'm a big fan of movies in general. I'm a really big fan of critique and criticism and study of all sorts of fiction, ranging from comic books to movies. So this is right up my alley, and this is just the kind of thing I enjoy doing. In fact, in my spare time with my buddies, we'll just sit down and go through movies like this ourselves. It's something we've always done. It's something I've done going back as long as I can remember when we'd be watching stuff on VHS. I enjoyed Mystery Science Theater 3000 for watching bad movies and trying to figure out why they were so bad, but sometimes why they were so fun. So let's take a look here and see how well SK does taking apart LittlePlatoon's arguments. Or let's see how well Platoon's arguments stand up to criticism. After all, it's easy to critique something, but what about when your criticism's the thing that's getting critiqued? Now, the fairest way I figured out how to score this is just to score it. So if SK challenges something and he gets it right, I'll give him a point there. If he challenges something that's wrong, I'll give him a point over here. Pretty straightforward. At the end, we'll take a look to see how everything tallied up. Now, do keep in mind, we're just doing this for fun. Just because someone likes a movie, or someone thinks a movie is bad, or someone thinks a movie is good, doesn't mean if we disagree we need to hate each other's guts or something. This is just us having some fun doing a review of a review of a review. As we're starting, also keep in mind, I'm going to be skipping some parts of the video where I either don't have anything to say, or there's nothing really being challenged in a way that I think is interesting to talk about. This isn't to remove any of the arguments that either video creator made. It's just to help us move through this whole video in a way that doesn't make this like 4 or 5 hours. It's basically the same thing SK himself did. It's just a good way to approach it. It's honestly also to encourage you guys to go watch the videos for yourselves. And not only the video I'm watching and the video that SK is reacting to and critiquing, but also just watch these guys' videos in general. LittlePlatoon puts out great videos. The production value on SK's video, whether or not I end up agreeing with everything, disagreeing with everything, or whatever in the middle, is still really good. It's clear he puts a lot of effort into his videos, so he takes his video making seriously. So give these guys views. I know I'm going to be watching more SK, and I'll continue watching LittlePlatoon, so shout out to them. With all that out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so I know I said I would cut out the parts where I didn't have a lot to say, but I had to keep in that beginning. Even though I'm a fan of LittlePlatoon and I'm a fan of EFAP, shit's just funny.
It's not every day that I respond to nearly 5-hour-long video essays, but I'm probably the only one on here crazy enough to do that.
How about responding to a response of a 5-hour video essay?
So it is what it is. We've reached the final boss of Superman criticism.
Good luck with that.
Oh man, don't tell me you got one guide. No, I'm just kidding.
Before I get started, I wanted to give a thanks to Exo Pokeri and Comic Legend from League Entertainment. They came up with a lot of good defenses that I didn't even think of, which will factor into much of what I say in this video, alongside me amending some criticisms that I had towards the plot. With that said, let's start the show.
And here we go.
Warner's attempt to speedrun their way to an MCU-sized franchise came to an ignominious end.
YagamiFire Productions, in cooperation with the Wayne Foundation, now presents a brief recap of the DC Extended Universe.
Kalel, no! Watch out!
And that's basically how it went.
And the sensible thing would have been for it to go away for a very, very long time. But things are not allowed to go away. Like the caged cow, IP must be milked to exhaustion before being sold off for parts. And so, Warner turned to a man for whom milking it is first nature.
Is someone trying to milk you?
No one is trying to milk us. Why do you always jump straight to milking?
James Gunn.
I know we haven't gotten to the actual film yet, but this point was so nonsensical that I just had to address it. If DC had such an awful reputation because of the DCEU, why is the sensible option to allow that to remain its reputation for a very, very long time? Releasing the Batman is exactly what was needed after the terrible adaptation in the DCEU. The same way Batman Begins is what Batman needed in order to save his reputation after Batman and Robin. The last major appearance of Superman was in the Snyder Cut, which was 4 years ago. And if we only count the big screen, we'd have to refer to the original Justice League from 8 years ago. I don't know why it's such a bad idea to fix his reputation instead of letting people remember Superman very badly in movies. It seems like he's trying to argue that this film shouldn't exist at all.
Well, to be fair to LittlePlatoon here, he was talking about DC as a franchise on the whole, and you mentioned Batman and Robin, then Batman Begins. Batman and Robin was 1997, and Batman Begins was 2005, so that's an 8-year span, whereas we got basically the end of the DCEU in 2023 with The Flash, and then we got Superman by James Gunn in 2025, which kicked off an entire new cinematic universe, but between those we're also getting other series in the universe, like Peacemaker Season 2, which somehow fits into the universe, don't ask anyone how, and Creature Commandos. So there really isn't a gap for a cooldown between the two things.
Not only has Superman been around for 3 years, 30 years if you include his backstory, but the world itself is not at its beginning. Metahumans are not just now appearing, they have been here for 3 centuries. The stakes are not just starting to ramp up, they are already worldwide. The story is not at its start, it is somewhere in the middle. Now all of these things will go on to pose a couple of problems for the film, but it's the last of them that poses the biggest problem. Sure, you can skip origin stories. The MCU did it with Peter Parker quite recently. Yeah, you can drop the audience into the middle of history. The Lord of the Rings takes this approach. But what you very rarely see, because it very rarely works, is beginning in the middle of the story.
The middle of the story starts with Lex releasing the video of his parents, not Superman being defeated by Ultraman. The reason the story starts with this is because it's the first direct move Lex makes on Superman within his plan. We're given the context that Superman's loss is a product of his involvement in Bravia, so we're not missing information. I understand he's leading to a point about how dialogue is done, but I felt it necessary to correct him on his usage of middle, as that has a specific connotation in the context of story structure.
See, the thing is here, he's talking about Superman's existence, not the beginning, middle, and end of the story of the movie. Platoon's talking about the story of Superman. That's why he mentions Spider-Man usually has an origin in the movies, but sometimes you get away with not showing the origin, and that's all right, like they did in the MCU. We haven't got any kind of origin for Superman in this movie. He just already exists. So it's like we're being thrust into the middle of the entire superhero arc here, where usually we get an origin, them figuring out their powers, them doing their first heroic act, learning some kind of lesson, etc., etc.
There is a very simple reason for this, and it is called the audience. This setup places the audience in a constantly inferior position. Every single character in this world knows more, or should know more, about the setting, and much more about each other than we do. There is no obvious audience surrogate who is as new to these events as we are, and that makes it very difficult to avoid as-you-know exposition, which is a problem that would cause talented writers a real headache, and James Gunn isn't one of those. James Gunn just says, fuck it, as you know. It's not my intent to front-load this video too much, but it's one of the movie's biggest structural flaws. Unless you're one of the vanishingly small number of comics readers, you won't have heard of many of the characters in this movie. Even if you have heard of them, you don't know the versions you're given in this movie. Nobody going in knows the world state, the relationships, the history, where things come from, or how they work. It implies the existence of an awful lot of world building, and therefore invites significant criticism when that world building is found to be absent, as it will be. The world James Gunn has built has 3 centuries of history to show, if not to tell, and it entirely fails at this task.
So, luckily for this review, I am one of those rapidly vanishing comic book readers that LittlePlatoon mentioned, and I'm gonna jump in here to just say that I agree with his assessment of the movie. Somehow the movie simultaneously seems to want you to know about Superman and the DC setting, that way you kind of better understand what's going on, but at the same time it breaks those expectations with the adaptation changes that the movie itself has made. This makes for a really jarring experience, and it's one of the things that I don't really like for these kind of movies to do. It comes off too much as pandering, where you're trying to get long-term fans to buy in just because things are familiar without actually introducing them to make you invested in them in the confines of the movie setting. The MCU used to be really good at avoiding this, where we'd learn about Thor and Captain America and Iron Man and like the characters for those characters in the movies instead of just basing our affinity for them on things that we knew about them from pop culture, like the comics. It really messes with my calibration for things. It's why I'm never a fan of getting hyped about a character being in any kind of adaptation until I see how they're being handled.
This movie isn't about 3 centuries before Superman 2025. This movie is about Superman 2025. Just because they establish information about its history doesn't mean the movie is obligated to give you a detailed history lesson about the world. They only need to establish information relevant to the story.
Okay, so I actually think SK is missing the point of what LittlePlatoon is pointing out here. He's not talking about the narrative necessarily. He's talking about the setting and the world that the narrative's taking place in. He's pointing out about how 300 years of metahuman history would really have huge, massive ramifications for how the world operates, how history might have been changed, etc. And that fundamentally undermines a bunch of our assumptions about how this world operates. There's a bunch of blanks there that we kind of have to deal with and just make assumptions about. And those assumptions are either going to come true, or they're going to be countermanded by other things we see in the movie, or they might just be hanging questions in our minds that we don't really get answered that just seems really weird throughout the film. It's actually an issue that Platoon is going to point out later.
The problem this poses has very little to do with the suspension of disbelief, and a lot more to do with the suspension of all critical faculties. As we will see from pretty much the very next scene, the minute you start asking questions is the minute this movie falls apart. Speaking of, we move into our next scene, which is our first trailer scene. Superman crashes, he summons Krypto. Krypto drags him to the Fortress of Solitude, where we meet K2S, robot number 4. But yeah, it's voiced by Alan Tudyk, and the voice and the mannerisms and the humor are very similar.
Skipping ahead so we can move towards the actual criticism.
So yeah, we're gonna be calling him K2S4 for all of the 2 scenes in which he's relevant.
He looked at me.
Do not ask why this mere automaton with no consciousness presents with feelings and emotions, because if you do that, you will be accused of lacking media literacy.
Or you'll receive a very simple explanation, and it's the fact that these robots are programmed to have a sense of humor, and therefore are capable of engaging in sarcastic humor like we've just heard.
So this is kind of a weird one because SK, my man, that isn't what sarcastic humor is. The example that LittlePlatoon gave is the robot not being sarcastic but being coy or kind of cutesy. She's getting flustered about Superman looking at her. That's a show of emotion that they're not supposed to have.
They're not just robotic in their speech or body movements, they're programmed to act more like humans. There are numerous examples of Gary doing just that.
I'm sorry, friend.
Cleaned yourself up pretty good, too.
You think so?
Yeah.
Maybe one day you'll give me a name.
Four's a name.
So is Gary.
To take this very obvious joke literally is to read this film in bad faith. The joke here is that they are technically built robots rather than living beings driven by natural brain chemistry, but they're ultimately programmed to act as if they do anyway. Hell, the way he chooses to state this in this hyper-specific manner is part of the humor in itself.
If I had any emotional capacity whatsoever, I'd be concerned about her partying.
Yeah, that might be, but that requires us to think that they were programmed to fake emotions and also constantly point out that they're faking emotions, which destroys the entire point of a personable robot that, despite not having emotions, can still interact with you in a way that is empathetic and emotional. The only reason you have them do that is for the meta reason of hammering the same joke over and over and over again in this movie, just like it does. And the meta reason of the joke, whether you like it or not, as far as your sense of humor, doesn't cut it for putting it in the script.
It's almost as if he's wording this in this oddly specific manner, because he is programmed to care and is simply making a joke about how he's still a robot. Now, if anyone tries to counter me by saying the jokes aren't funny, I'll simply counter by saying that's not an objective argument.
And I'll counter the counter by pointing out not enough people like the jokes in this movie for the movie to turn a profit.
I put your partner's message on to soothe you.
Now, this is a very minor quibble compared to some of the things we have in store, but they didn't know he was coming. It is very important that the robots did not know Superman was coming, and that they have functionally no awareness of what happens outside of their fortress, meaning that K2S4 put the parents' message on to soothe Superman despite not knowing that Superman was coming or that he needed soothing, because the script says that we have to introduce the message here.
Okay, Platoon, what happens the next time we see the robots?
Superman, I preemptively put up this soothing.
This directly implies that Gary does this ahead of time when he expects a Superman appearance. Sure, he didn't expect Superman to be injured like this, but he expected him to return nonetheless since he left Krypto with them before he left.
SK is right on this one. The movie does establish later on that basically whenever Superman comes into the fortress, the robots play this message. That does create the kind of weird situation, though, where Superman always wants this soothing message on whenever he goes to the fortress, which just makes him kind of seem bizarre and unhealthy. I don't know, it's like he's treating the message as an emotional support blanket, and that's just strange, man. Like, actual factual Super Baby in the Donner film was more of a badass than the adult 30-year-old Superman in the Gunn universe, apparently.
The message begins to glitch.
The message was damaged to transit from Krypton to Earth. But what is there? Hey, Colonel. We love you more than heaven, our son. We love you more than life. Our beloved home will soon be gone forever. But hope vitalizes our hearts, and that hope is you, Kal-El. We have searched the universe for a home where you can do the most good.
And now, let's begin. Fucking them all to death!
And the rest of the message is lost.
Okay, but he knows all of that. It's quite possible they wrote the 12 robot into the scene as an excuse for this exposition, but 12 is not a proper audience surrogate, and 12 doesn't need the English translation of this message. She is a robot. The robots translated this message.
I could start by mentioning that Superman is also voicing the message, which implies that the tradition is to voice the message together when listening.
Yeah, which is still creepy as fuck. Imagine this dude Superman programming a bunch of robots to go over this mantra his parents sent him as if it's some kind of cult affirmation. Like, this motherfucker is Stuart Smalley in his mirror making sure he's gonna have a good day.
I'm gonna do a great show today, and I'm gonna help people because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
Meanwhile, a new character is approaching the Fortress of Solitude. This is the Engineer. It is at once name, title, job, and description. I don't really know how she got here from Metropolis so quickly, given that Metropolis is over there, and here we're basically in the Arctic, and we established that Superman only arrived here about 3 minutes ago.
If only there was a scene establishing that the Engineer can fly. If only we saw the Engineer flying almost as fast as Superman. Oh, that's in the movie. Let's not forget that Superman is in a weakened state, so he's not going to be flying at top speed.
Picking just a random example, The Dark Knight Rises has the same time-distance fuckery as Superman does.
There's no way you compared a normal guy getting across the planet seemingly too quickly to someone who is shown to fly almost as fast as Superman. Whether you see this as an issue in The Dark Knight Rises or not, it should be abundantly clear why this is a stupid comparison to make.
Definitely gonna agree with SK on this one. This is a real major miss, which is rare for LittlePlatoon on this, and I'm not sure why he's doubling down on it here, which is actually why I'm giving double points to SK. We're shown that the Engineer is very, very fast. She's fast enough to keep up with Superman later in the movie. This is the movie presenting to us how fast she is, so we kind of have to accept that, and it's believable with her control over technology. The comparison to Batman here and how he goes from the middle of wherever the League of Shadows had him to all the way in Gotham is definitely not valid because the Engineer can fly under her own power. It's way different than randomly getting from one place across the world to another when you're just a guy.
And yet, the Superman movie has been given, at least at the time of recording, a pass, based on no reason more substantive than vibes.
And you've given your own review a pass for nothing more substantive than I didn't pay attention, but I need to shit on the movie anyway. Strawmanning is fun.
Okay, like, what are we doing here, man? Calm down. It's just a movie. Yeah, Platoon has problems with it, but geez, yeah, seriously, talk about a straw man. Chill.
Sir, you are only 83% restored to health.
What does that even mean? Come on, James.
There is a process behind the sun healing Superman, and it was only 83% finished. They have scans providing them detailed information about the damage done to his body, which means they would also have scans providing them detailed information for how much his body was healed from these damages. I mean, I don't know why I had to explain this since the film already said that he was 83% restored to health, and we see the medical technology they're using, but this is apparently something I have to explain in detail, even though this review just complained about the film being overly expository. Now you want it to be overly expository to explain something that has obvious implications?
Okay, so as a genuine Superman nerd, you don't need to use exposition for this. You can do this in way, way better ways that gets across what Platoon is saying here that's kind of weak about this whole scene and tells you more about Superman. All you have to do is reference his solar power capacity. Superman's cells absorb solar energy. That's what gives him his powers. It's what heals him. It's what keeps him going. You could just show on a screen as they're healing him as part of this process that they're replenishing his solar energy very rapidly, but that he stopped it when he's still at 83%. So when you have the robot mention that he's only at 83%, you now have a frame of reference for not only what that means quite literally, instead of just some vague nebulous like fighting game health bar they can apparently measure for Superman, which to Platoon's point is really weird and abstract, but it also informs you through that Superman absorbs and utilizes solar radiation for his powers, which you wouldn't know in this movie unless you are already a Superman fan. You might wonder why they're doing that.
Superman is upset to find that Krypto has gone a bit mad and destroyed large parts of the fortress interior. This is supposed to be funny and endearing.
Superman robots, I thought I told you to keep an eye on him.
I feel like you should have come up with a better name than that.
Which is not an objective argument against the film or his character, but okay.
Okay, so when we were first dealing with the Superman robots and SK remarked on something being sarcastic humor, I was just beginning to wonder if like jokes and sarcasm were going to be an ongoing issue with this review. And now after that one, yeah, maybe it is. Because I'm pretty sure Platoon didn't mean that as some objective criticism thing. Man, it was a joke about using the super blunt term Superman robots for Superman robots. What you could have done way better is to say that they were being true to the Superman robots introduced in World's Finest issue 42 way back in 1949. A veritable Shangri-La of blunt to the point of silly names for things. God, I love the golden age. Anyway, that way you'd not look like you missed the joke, and you'd use the joke as a springboard for a bit of trivia. Hey, that's what I did. Give me a damn point. 1 point to YagamiFire.
Krypto begins to bite Superman's ankles, and it's at this point, 6 minutes into the movie, that you know whether you're going to find the dog cute or irritating. Given its prominence in the marketing, you would expect it to play a much bigger role than it in fact gets. The good bit of Guardians 3 showed James Gunn was able to exploit very cheap animals in pain emotional pulls, but then give a proper story to them with something approaching proper characters. I say the good bit of Guardians 3 because the rest of that movie was really quite bad. But alas, it seems as if the lesson James Gunn has taken from that experience is that people like animals regardless of context.
It's no secret that James Gunn loves animals, so I'm not going to pretend that there wasn't a personal motivation here, but to claim that he decided to throw in animals regardless of context is something he will fail to substantiate. Krypto is used to show the strength of Superman's patience in smaller ways that humans can relate to. Dog troubles is a perfectly relatable struggle to utilize for this. What's so bad about using Krypto for this other than pointing out that he's an animal?
Well, the thing is, Platoon does qualify his entire criticism here, because he says it's as if, and what he's referring to is that it's far less substantial of a story with Krypto in this movie than you get with the animals in Guardians 3. And that's kind of the problem he's pointing out. Krypto's really prominent in all the advertising, and something could have been done with Krypto, if not as a character, since Krypto is just a dog, but with the dynamic he shares with other characters, specifically Superman, in the movie. That doesn't happen. There's no real growth at all between Krypto and Superman and their relationship. Superman doesn't learn anything about Krypto or learn anything from his relationship with Krypto. It's just a display of, yeah, Superman is patient and cares about a dog. Wow, okay, man, he cares about a dog. What an interesting character trait. It's not. It doesn't build anything for Superman. So it's as if all James Gunn took from Guardians 3 was animals in pain, animals scared, tug on heartstrings. Oh, really good to manipulate audience with. That's what Platoon is outlining here.
Superman, keen to get back to the fight, flies off directly over the engineer, making it quite lucky that he wasn't looking down.
What's lucky about that? Superman's priority is Metropolis being in danger, not someone hiking in Antarctica, which is something normal people have done.
Okay, man, you gotta be joking here. What's lucky? It's lucky because it would unravel a shit ton of events in the movie if Superman, who we know can perceive things at super speed because he's super fast, and who has supervision, just glanced down and happened to see the engineer. If that happens, so much stuff in the movie has to happen differently. And this excuse that, oh, it's a person hiking in Antarctica? Come on, man. How many people are going to be in Antarctica in skin-tight clothes without any head protection, hiking near the Fortress of Solitude, which I'm assuming is not named for its proximity to anything resembling civilization? Are we really going to say that's going to look normal to Superman, or hell, anyone? You know what? If Superman saw her walking, he'd probably fly down just to make sure she was okay, because if she was dressed like that in Antarctica and she was a normal person, she'd be dead in minutes. It's called the concept of temperature. Please look it up, man.
The fortress begins to retreat back into the ice. It is also quite lucky that the fortress has no means of scanning or observing its own exterior.
It does. It scans its entrance for Superman's DNA. The engineer is far away from the entrance, just as anyone walking around here would. It doesn't scan literally all of Antarctica to monitor what everyone's doing, which would be a weird invasion of privacy if he did that.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to introduce a new counter that I'm going to call the SK whoosh counter. It's when any point Platoon makes just whooshes right over SK's head, apparently, and he misses it or misinterprets it. Bro, she's within visual distance of the fortress. You could see her from it. My house has better visibility around it with basic security cameras, and this thing is supposed to be super alien technology. And for some reason, they have no idea what's going on around the building. Because if they did, it would be a big problem that they see the engineer so nearby. There is a huge gap between Superman has security cameras around his front porch and he is surveilling all of Antarctica like a nanny state. The difference between those two things is so vast, I don't know if you're mistakenly misinterpreting what Platoon means or purposefully misrepresenting this point. But either way, since you didn't really address the point here, I'm not going to give SK a wrong count. I'm just going to give it this new count because of just how off base it was from what Platoon was arguing.
Wait, didn't James Gunn say the goofy flying shot from the trailer wasn't going to be in the movie? I guess it's one of his smaller lies.
Are you serious right now? The shot in the commercial is not the same as the one in the movie. I can show both right now as I speak. These are two different takes, which means they're two different shots. So when Gunn says that the commercial shot is not the one they used, he's correct. It's not in the movie. Do your research before claiming things are lies without a basis.
Okay, flag on the play. Really don't like this take and this response. This reeks of, aha, I didn't rob the bank of $1 million. I robbed the bank of gold worth $1 million. It's a complete semantic game here where we're going shots and takes. And what makes it worse is this.
Do your research before claiming things are lies without a basis.
Do your research, right? That's what you said, SK. Okay, here's what LittlePlatoon said.
Didn't James Gunn say the goofy flying shot from the trailer wasn't going to be in the movie?
Here's what SK said.
These are two different takes, which means they're two different shots.
Wait, why did you say take and that a take is a new shot? It's not. That's not how that works. Let's take a look at what takes are. Takes are different takes of a shot. You can have a shot that has multiple takes of it. That's how it works, but they're all for the same shot. What Platoon is talking about here is accurate. Even if it's a different take of the same shot in the movie. The compositing is the same, the special effects in use here are the same, and it creates the same result where it just looks janky and weird. So yes, what LittlePlatoon said is accurate. James Gunn said they didn't use the shot in the movie, but they absolutely did. Did they use a different take of the shot? Yes. But that's not the same thing as saying they used a different shot. This is the same shot, but a different take. So even aside from the technicality of, oh, semantically it's different, no, you're still wrong there. You're wrong on both accounts. How would I put this?
Do your research before claiming things are lies without a basis.
Yeah, there you go. Do your research before you're so quick to jump all over someone. There's no need for that. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure how to grade that one just because there seems to be some aggression towards LittlePlatoon in this review, which is fine if you're getting fired up, but when you walk into a big mistake like this, it's really putting your foot in your mouth. However, I don't know if that's SK messing up terminology here between taking a shot and not getting it, or if it's because it's just an attempt at a gotcha on LittlePlatoon with like a technicality here and semantics, and I don't like semantic games like that, so I'm gonna give both.
Meanwhile, in Metropolis, the Hammer of Baravia is shouting at a building.
Your Superman has abandoned you. The people of Baravia will not ignore him inserting himself into our affairs.
By the way, that's David Cornsweet, aka Superman himself, giving the speech as the Hammer, aka Ultraman. Yep, he did the voice work, which makes sense since Ultraman is a clone of him, but that also means that Ultraman, the brain-dead clone, can talk? And he can memorize lines and then repeat them with totally proper inflection and a faked Baravian accent? Did Superman not recognize his own voice? Wait, or are we going to say this was lines Lex had created and then played from the suit to create the facade of a speech from the disguised Ultraman? Which would mean that what? Lex purposely had his false flag terrorist that is actually a disguised Superman clone sound like Superman speaking with an accent? That opens up a whole shit ton of questions.
Things here could spiral out of control very quickly. If metahumans have been around for 300 years, you would think that some kind of system would be in place governing their use and their actions. We will see a teeny tiny bit of that presently with the debut of the corporate gimmick squad, but what you take from this scene is that Superman is de facto the American superhero. And so his involvement in Baravia means that random buildings and civilians in Metropolis are fair game? Because, you know, America isn't known to take that shit lying down.
In the movie, they don't treat Superman as a threat over his actions in Baravia.
Big Blue stopped the war. Naive, maybe, but well-intentioned.
Without solid proof of malicious intent, it's just not worth the risk.
Am I the only one who did the reading?
Superman is so powerful that they have no means of policing his actions, and as long as they bring an overall net good to the world, they're not interested in taking action against him. So how is it a contradiction that Superman defending America doesn't get him in hot water?
You fought some pretty major wars because people have attacked your buildings.
How does this relate to the US in the film? Do you want the US to engage in war over a threat that Superman is handling? One that's not even confirmed to be from Baravia? If not, then I fail to see the relevance this had.
Okay, so this is firmly going into the whoosh category. Not only do you say that Superman is handling the threat of the Hammer, which is directly opposite of what we're shown at the very beginning of the movie, with Superman getting the piss kicked out of him to the point where he has to go home to his Fortress of Solitude and listen to his daddy-mommy message to feel better about himself. But the US has zero reaction to the Hammer of Baravia at all. Like, they do nothing about the guy and have zero interest in him. It's like they know they can't get involved with it because it will fuck Lex's plan, as if they read the script. They don't engage the Hammer with military forces after he beats Superman. They don't ask the Justice Gang to get involved at any point. They don't investigate Baravia itself to see if there's any ties legitimately between them and the Hammer. Hell, they don't even track the Hammer with satellites or any other surveillance when he leaves the city, because if they did, they'd see him fly to a Luthor Corps base within visual distance of goddamn Metropolis. How do you not get this point?
You might have heard of one of them at least. It's called Last Week, but I have to stress the point. 300 years. It took less than 10 years for the MCU to introduce the Sokovia Accords. The Avengers Initiative began as a quasi-governmental initiative under Nick Fury, who was answering to the Council. The presence of superheroes naturally raises questions about legitimacy, jurisdiction, oversight, and management, and a believable world history cannot shirk these questions.
They address it in the film. Superman is so powerful that as long as he's bringing a net positive to the world, they don't really want to take action against him due to the risk this would bring, and if Superman steps out of line on his own, they'll appoint Planet wants to go after Superman. What more elaboration is needed?
So we're going to go with that America and other nations aren't really that interested in reining in metahumans in any way, especially if they're too powerful like Superman. Does that sound like the way nations in reality work? Like, just think about Iron Man in the Iron Man movie. In the very first movie, the government was immediately sniffing around Iron Man and what he was doing, who he was, and what he was capable of. Even Batman, who's a guy in a suit, immediately has police interested in who he is and trying to figure out what's going on with him in basically every continuity, because that just makes sense. If you scale this up to a world with a lot of superhumans, and then you have Superman who's even more powerful than the average, yeah, America's going to be really interested in this guy and doing what they can to plan for him ever doing stuff they don't want him to do. They would have to plan for that. It's kind of actually their job as a nation to maintain security.
The movie expects you to accept that metahumans, gods, and monsters have been around for 300 years, but it has no way of accounting for it.
In what way? Explain an event or detail in the movie that would be different if they did account for how long metahumans have existed for.
He just did, man. Superman involving himself in a foreign conflict should already be something that has come up countless times with other metahumans over the centuries. It's been 300 years of this, as LittlePlatoon pointed out, not once, but twice in this clip. It's waved off as something unique to Superman, who can just go do it because he's so strong and no one actually cares that much about him messing with foreign conflicts that can include US allies. That beggars belief. Similarly, they don't have any standard procedures for reacting to the hammer attacking skyscrapers in a major US city. Everyone just shrugs it off and moves on, even when Superman's defeated by him and they have to wait for him to come back. No one reacts to that. No one has any plan before, during, or afterward, and this is a conflict that involves US allies that Superman involved himself in, and there's just no real follow-up to it. You would think over 3 centuries of superhumans existing, potentially representing nations, representing foreign powers, representing their own interests, corporate interests, everything like that, you would think that things would be very different in this world and there'd be very different expectations for how things are reacted to. But none of that is on display. That's what LittlePlatoon is talking about. I'm just going to skip past some of the following stuff because it's just SK continuing to miss that point.
Anyway, though, Lex Luthor is here, and he is in cahoots with the Hammer of Baravia. So again, we join the film middle of character, middle of world, middle of universe, middle of world building, middle of story. Lex is already a villain, and the movie wastes no time establishing that.
Okay, let's start with the middle of character. This isn't a story about Lex Luthor becoming a supervillain. How does this make this the middle of Lex's story? You say this is middle of world, which I have no clue what the hell that means. Do you want the story to start 4 billion years ago when the world technically began? What is this word salad disguising itself as detailed criticism? I ask the same question regarding middle of universe. What are you saying? Middle of world building is basically a different way of saying middle of world or middle of universe, and it's just as incomprehensible of a statement. Middle of story was talked about earlier, but it seems to me like he just came up with as many variations as he could, just to make his arguments sound more substantive than they really are. With all of this word salad, there's really nothing to chew on.
I don't know. I followed this without a problem. Typically in a film when there's an antagonist, they'll be established and we'll see an inciting incident of some kind with them. That incident usually puts them at odds with the hero. In the OG Superman, Lex also starts as a villain, but his clash with Superman arises out of Lex's own plan to enrich himself, and that puts him at odds with Superman, who will naturally attempt to stop the calamity that's part of the plan. In Batman 89, Jack Napier is already a villain before becoming the Joker, but it's that criminality that causes him to come into conflict with Batman, and that confrontation turns Napier into the Joker, which sets off their animosity for each other and Joker's increasing insanity. This film just starts with Lex as a villain, and he just hates Superman. There's no inciting incident, there's no confrontation, there's no seed of conflict between them. We skip that entirely and just have to take on faith for most of the movie that Lex is a bad guy that hates Superman, because in the cultural zeitgeist, we know that Lex Luthor is a guy that hates Superman, and he's Superman's archenemy. The movie rides on assumptions of what the viewer already knows, feels, and is invested in. That's not good. It's not only lazy, it can create a major lack of buy-in from audience members that don't have that level of pre-investment or don't want to just grant it to the film.
That's odd. It looks like Lex just read out an instruction. Yeah, he's reading instructions. So yeah, this is What the movie is trying to convey is that Lex has studied Superman and devised a specific moveset to counter Superman's most common fighting techniques. But as demonstrated, it only works because Superman has no fighting techniques to begin with. It works because Superman just flies face first into his enemies and then lets them hit him.
If we slow down the footage, we can clearly see Superman preparing for a punch. Lex knows that choking Superman would cause him to redirect his focus on his throat, since leaving that unattended could result in a knockout at any moment. Let's not forget that Superman is operating at 83% power, while Ultraman is at full power, which gives his reaction time an edge over Superman's.
And this has to be the case because Lex looking at a screen, then reading a number.
Lex doesn't read a number, he voices the number.
He's reading out a number, reading aloud. God, man, just try to be a little good faith here. You heard Platoon describe what Luthor was doing. We know what he's doing. You don't need to just jump on everything to try and get a dunk in.
He watches the fight, then commands a move based on the position Superman is in. And considering Superman is in a restrained position first and foremost, this gives Lex the ability to keep up with the fight much easier. It's almost like that's the purpose of him doing the restraint to begin with.
Then reciting the number over the radio and the hammer implementing the instruction is a wildly inefficient approach that any normal, unskilled fighter would likely do well against, because the time it takes for a signal to get from your brain to your muscles is infinitesimal. It's much quicker than Lex's process, and you have options.
There's a problem with your little comparison here. You can't rely on Ultraman simply having a signal go from his brain to his muscle, because Ultraman is established to be dumb. Lex's guidance is to focus his strategy. It tells him what moves to use based on what Superman appears to be planning, and since Lex was shown to process Superman preparing a fist, he knows that he's planning to punch him. Hence why Lex issues a command that would choke Superman before his punch lands, and force Superman to focus on the fact that he's being choked.
Okay, so I'm giving SK a whoosh here and a wrong. And really, I feel like giving him +5 because this is so monumentally goofy to defend in a serious way. If you wanted to hand wave this away and just say, yeah, it's stupid, let's just accept that it works, that'd be one thing. But saying that this is logical or reasonable, there's no way, man. I have to presume you've never been in a fight, and in fact, you've never even seen a fight or even played a fighting game for you to think that this is reasonable even a little bit. I'm also giving a whoosh because what Platoon is pointing out isn't that it's not better for Ultraman to be controlled. Of course it's better for Ultraman to be controlled some way. That makes all the sense in the world because he's a big bumbling moron, apparently, as far as the movie is concerned, even though he fights pretty well against Superman without instructions later in the movie, but whatever, we'll just ignore that. That's not the argument Platoon is making. Platoon is making the very obvious argument that giving instructions while watching a fight and then having those instructions typed into a computer during something as fast as a hand-to-hand battle, especially one between two people that have super speed, doesn't make any sense. You couldn't sit down opposite of someone at an arcade cabinet and have a friend give you instructions of what button to press at what time live and win a round like that, let alone in an actual battle. This is just not something that's reasonable. It's even worse because that would only be one person separated from you giving you instructions. Lex has created a setup where there's more than one person. He has to give the instructions, and then that person has to hear those instructions, type them in, relay them through the console to Ultraman, who then receives the instructions, and then Ultraman acts on them. Have you ever seen how upset the fighting game community gets over lag over frames when it comes to delay? That's frames, man. That's 1/60th of a second. And we're talking conversational speed with Lex giving instructions here. There is no way Ultraman is keeping up. He's going to be always behind in this fight, and Superman would definitely win. The only argument you would possibly have is that Lex is so brilliant and Superman is so predictable in every fight he's in that Lex is able to choreograph every step of the fight ahead of time down to the millisecond. And if that was the case, he wouldn't have to give live instructions. He could just have a script running with Ultraman being a player piano in battle, doing everything on cue as if this was all planned. I wouldn't really believe that either, but for Lex and how unbelievably smart he is in this movie, that would be more plausible than the amount of delay being created by this instructional method producing a victory, that I would accept that entire mastermind Lex choreographing the fight before this. There is no winning this argument. There's a reason so many people have pointed out why this is dumb.
And if you do so much as one unpredictable thing, Lex's time to recalculate would end up compounding his issues.
This is true in any fight. Yes, if an opponent does something unpredictable, then that will create more issues. That doesn't mean Ultraman can't fight back. Ultraman is shown to be capable of fighting back on his own if something so unpredictable were to occur, just to a simplistic enough degree to defend himself and buy time for Lex to issue another command. Another workaround Lex has relied on is shown after Ultraman takes numerous punches from Superman. This results in Lex trying to make the first move once they continue the fight, where he writes down two commands. The first one is so Ultraman delivers a basic attack so Superman would most likely counter with a punch, followed by the second move that's designed to react to Superman's counter. It's almost as if Lex can trap Superman if he needs to.
Okay, so I'm going to give a point here to SK because this is a fair point for an opening move, but that's all you're going to get for credit on this. Yes, this makes sense for Lex Luthor's method to work in a way where he can give a small series of maneuvers where that translates to Ultraman having a good exchange with Superman. But the fight is going to break down so fast into so many variables at such speed that it's totally implausible for Lex's method, as shown earlier in the movie, to be anything but stupid. Latching onto this point and trying to defend it is a total losing strategy. Let it go, man. No, wait. Here, I'll help. 9L. 9L. That's the command to disengage and stop fighting, right? SK9L.
Superman is supposed to be the most powerful metahuman. The movie told us as much. Superman has never lost a fight. The movie told us that as well. Superman is incredibly fast. We've just seen him flying at extraordinary speeds, and he got from the Fortress of Solitude to Metropolis in just a couple of minutes. He made the reverse journey while injured in 3 minutes. The movie told us that as well. Superman has supreme strength and a host more powers in his set. So how did he lose to a guy who's receiving sequential orders of a fucking list?
Because Lex saw what Superman was about to do, voiced a command informed by him studying Superman's fight patterns, then put him in a restraint that makes it easier for Lex to track the fight and attack Superman.
9L, man. Giant 9L.
It's killing me. I gotta stop this thing.
Please stop. Restating the bullshit that the movie wants us to swallow doesn't make it somehow more palatable. This system would break down immediately. It's not believable.
It's like he knows Superman's every move before he makes it.
That's like you don't work here, but you're sitting there wearing a headset and you were apparently involved in this strategy. Could this possibly be a cue for exposition?
Yes, been studying him for years. He's developed over 2,500 fight moves for any situation.
That's really not very impressive. Average Tekken players do that every day, and it doesn't answer any of the other problems I've just mentioned.
It actually does address your questions in more detail than it really needs. If Lex knows Superman's move before he makes it, then he would know how to counter him preparing a punch when he sees it. He would also be aware of how Superman would react to a specific attack, which enables him to command a follow-up attack before Ultraman has even made the move. If he studied his fighting patterns, then he'd be able to make reasonable predictions. If he developed numerous different moves, then he's accounting for a variety of situations.
Again, no, this isn't reasonable. To highlight just how not reasonable this is, let's take a look at a match with my GOAT, Roy Jones Jr. versus Percy Harris, and we're going to show a wind-up for a punch. And you know what? I'll be as fair as possible. We'll have Lex there at the ready to reply with his 1A defense, and we'll see how far Lex gets. And yes, I know, the counter-argument's going to be, well, Superman's not a trained fighter like Roy Jones Jr., the best fighter ever. Sure, that's accurate, but you know what Superman is? Superhuman with superhuman speed. So this is Lex Luthor reacting to someone that isn't superhuman throwing a punch. Let's see how he does.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
As Jones slams away. The wobbly Harris against the ropes is...
Holy shit, that didn't go well, did it? It's almost like Lex has no way to react to stuff that fast. The only way this would be believable is if Superman has the slowest, biggest tells in the history of fighting. So either way, I don't believe that, or I don't believe Lex's speed. You need to pick your poison here. Neither is a good option. I'll even put this in super slow-mo and show you how little time Lex has here. This is 8 frames of animation. Do you realize how little time that is? There is nothing Lex can do at this speed. His Bizarro Ultraman is getting his ass beat if Lex goes with this stupid methodology. Also, keep in mind, I'm even giving you extra slack because this is just Lex's reaction time. This doesn't account for the time for the technician to listen to Lex, type in the command, and send it over to Ultra Goof. So yeah, we're done here. That part of the discussion is over. Any further attempts to defend Lex using this methodology is going to get another wrong, because if you're going to keep doubling down, I'm going to keep scoring you down. I don't know if 9L is not working, 3L, 4L, 7L, whatever it is, you need to take an L here. Hold the L.
On top of that, it means there's not even a hint of mystery or suspense about what's really going on.
Why does this need to be a mystery to the audience? Is it really a mystery that the guy who hates Superman and benefits from the Baravian military conflict would be playing a role in said conflict?
Yeah, but SK, we don't know that Lex Luthor exists, let alone that he hates Superman. You only know that because you're watching the movie and see a bald guy who's now coordinating a mission against Superman, and you realize, oh, this must be Lex Luthor, based entirely on your background pop culture knowledge of Lex Luthor and Superman. Also, him benefiting from Barovia is also something we don't know. That is established later in the movie. So all of this stuff is the cart getting put before the horse, where you don't understand the context of any of these items. They're just being thrown at you without any of it being properly developed. Yes, in a movie you can do that and it can pay out, but the structure of this movie does not bear that out, and that's what's going to be explained later in this review, and I 100% agree with that.
Thing happens, villain is immediately revealed, character exposits the super secret evil workings, pregnant women and people with heart conditions are safe to watch this movie because there are no surprises coming.
Recounting what happens on screen is not substantive criticism.
Right, but reiterating what the movie was doing with the whole 1A thing and how that's supposed to work in movie was substantial support for why it makes sense. It makes sense because it makes sense. Also, no, he's not just saying it's bad because it's bad. Platoon outlined how this structuring deflates tension in the movie, and essentially your defense boiled down to, yeah, the movie does that. Do you think pointing out that the movie does that is some kind of criticism? Yeah, it can be criticism to outline what the movie does poorly.
Okay, we know what Lex is doing, we know how he's doing it, but we don't know why he's doing it.
He's doing this to make the public question Superman's actions and jar him poor, and to give the engineer time to study the fortress and hand him proof of its existence.
Okay, so easiest whoosh of this video so far. SK, he's not literally asking from the perspective of someone that has watched the entire film why Lex is doing this. He's highlighting that at this point in the movie, we, the viewing audience, don't have any connection to Lex to frame the actions he's committing that we're witnessing. He's just an evil guy doing evil things for unknown reasons. It's like if we were watching Spider-Man and suddenly Green Goblin's first appearance was him flying up and turning executives into Party City skeletons. Yeah, we can assume Goblin wants to turn people into skeletons, but we have no idea why he's killing these people. So we have no investment in him doing it. You dig?
Who is he in this movie? What's his past?
His past is a well-accomplished billionaire who has created scientific advancements, feeding his ego and lust for power. His hard work in contrast to Superman's immediate and relatively effortless praise grows his envy towards Superman.
Today's done it again, Harry Kane.
He's not asking an actual question, man.
What's his motive?
He wants to be seen as superior to Superman.
Done it again!
Why is his motive?
Because he has a lust for power and wants to be loved by the public.
You dirty bastard, you've done it again!
Where is the card?
What turned him into this villainous character with a fixation on Superman?
He sees Superman as a threat to his ego and he wants him out of the picture for his own selfish desires.
He's done it again!
Granite, you're...
And what does he hope to gain from destroying him?
Power, attention, and praise.
He's done it again, Harry Kane. Thanks for the sucker.
Meanwhile, the engineer reports back to Lex with the location of the Fortress of Solitude. Oh hey, she has a little jetpack. But she can't have flown all the way to the Fortress of Solitude on that little jetpack. She got there way too soon for that to be the case.
The entire structure has descended into the ice.
So your issue is that a jetpack allows her to get around efficiently?
Oh, thank God, he finally got one right again. I thought we were never going to hear that sound effect ever again. Anyway, yeah, this is a weird point from LittlePlatoon because we find out later that the engineer can imagine into existence whatever she wants as far as technology thanks to her nanomachines. So a little jetpack to scoot around is plausible for her, and Afterburner super jetpack to go really fast from Metropolis to Antarctica is also reasonable. Her power set is just really, really open-ended like that. She has really cool powers. Fuck, she looks so much worse in the movie than she does in the comic books, though.
We'll shortly learn A, that Superman was acting independently, B, that he did not chat to anyone in the US government about his mission, C, that he is not and has never been a representative of the US government, D, that Baravia is an old and close ally of the United States, and E, that this is all pretty common knowledge. So now we have a metahuman supposedly aligned with a foreign state attacking a US city because an independent superhero stopped them from invading another foreign state. This doesn't work.
It's almost like Lex is trying to turn people against Superman and make his actions seem more questionable than they really are.
No, man, he just outlined how the actions and the consequences don't really make sense. Superman is not a representative of the United States. That's outlined in the movie. He's not seen that way. But the Hammer of Baravia shows up like Superman is and starts attacking American citizens, not limiting his attack to just Superman. This would make Baravia seem like it's a legitimate target for reprisal by the United States, even though the United States isn't what caused Superman to go attack them. The complete causality of these two things does not line up. It makes everything the Hammer is doing seem really suspect, which just compounds the problem that the United States never does anything to investigate the Hammer and never questions Baravia over it. That's the disconnect that Platoon is pointing out. It has nothing to do with Superman being questionable. It has to do with the situation and what characters think about it and act upon it being questionable. Please follow along with this.
The US would not let Israel, I wonder why I chose Israel, it would not let Israel attack its cities just because Elon Musk dropped a rocket on Tel Aviv.
How are they letting the Hammer of Baravia attack their city? They're allowing Superman to defend the city from the threat.
What?
How are they letting the Hammer of Baravia attack their city?
Oh my god, after getting that one right, he wants to give me an aneurysm or something. They're letting him attack the city explicitly by virtue of allowing Superman to be the one to try to defend it. Relying on Superman requires them to allow the Hammer to attack the city. More importantly than that, we saw Superman get beat and the US government still did nothing, and they have no follow-up at all. They're explicitly letting it happen and then letting him get away with it after the fact with no investigation and no work done at all. They don't talk to Lex about using Planet Watch or anything to even look into the Hammer. He lasered a fucking building!
And no, the soon-to-come revelation that this was all a false flag operation will not obviate this criticism, since it is a false flag operation and the US has every reason to believe that the Hammer of Baravia is a Baravian superhero. All this, once again, highlights the attenuated world building. 300 fucking years, James. I think the world would have procedures in place for this kind of eventuality.
Yeah, like letting Superman save the city.
Yeah, man, that makes all the sense in the world. About 200 years ago, after a century of metahumans already existed, as nations were clashing in various battles with muskets and shit, and one was attacked by a superpowered individual, the Founding Fathers saw all that, and when they were penning the Declaration of Independence and outlining the Articles of Confederation, they said, our plan to deal with this sort of situation going forward is, screw it, Superman will take care of it. Then Ben Franklin looked over and said, who in the kite lightning fuck is Superman? And he was told, don't worry, in about 190 years, we'll be all over situations like this. I can't believe SK somehow doesn't understand this point about there being 300 years of previous superhuman history to this world.
If this sort of thing were commonplace, the world would be constantly at war, and a US government that takes no view on its biggest cities being attacked by their would-be allies is, practically speaking, a non-entity. We are told the US government exists in this movie, we are shown them existing in this movie, but they are not agents in this movie, because James Gunn hasn't bothered to ensure that his world actually works.
You haven't explained why the government doesn't work in this movie. You seem to think that the government is fine with their city being attacked, yet they enable the most powerful superhero to defend it unless there's proof of malicious intent.
Dude, this isn't that hard. The United States government has every reason to believe they've either been directly attacked by an agent of one of their foreign allies, or a superhuman false flag has taken place to try to incriminate their foreign ally, and up to this point, they have done nothing about it, nor will they do anything about that in the entirety of the runtime of the film. In fact, the only thing they're doing is exactly what you said, allowing Superman to take care of it and relying on him to protect them. That would be tantamount to the US sanctioning what Superman did in Baravia against the interests of Baravia, who we are told is a US ally. How can you not see the major conflict that creates? They let Superman interfere in Baravia, they let the Hammer attack them, they never investigate or sanction or do anything else following those two actions, and they do nothing to prevent either of those things from happening in the future. They just shrug it off as a potential super agent of a foreign state attacking them and go, oh well, I guess Superman kind of mostly took care of that, sort of, and then they just go with it. That would be a huge deal. It makes the United States look totally impotent and reliant on Superman, or as if Superman is directly acting as an agent for the United States, which would retroactively seem to sanction what Superman did in Baravia, which would be actions against one of our own allies. This would be a giant political nightmare.
Nor do any other metahumans, who are many and numerous and who've existed for 300 years, actually operate by any identifiable rules. None of them are involved in this scene because the script wants this to be a Superman moment, meaning that the world seems to operate just by what is convenient.
The Justice Gang are representatives of the US, so engaging with the conflict could increase political tensions. This is the exact reason they're not in favor of getting involved in politics or breaking Superman out of prison.
But the risk is just not worth the beef between the US government and the Justice Gang.
Since Superman is not a representative of the US and operates independently, and is the most qualified to handle the threat, he's the safer option to rely on. Now, that's part one of why this criticism doesn't work.
Well, we're gonna have to wait to hear what part two is, because part one is already wrong for numerous reasons.
The Justice Gang are representatives of the US.
The Justice Gang are not representatives of the US government. This is explicit in the movie. They're a corporate team. They're employees of an international corporation, and they're employed by Maxwell Lord. They don't work for the US government. In fact, your own clip shows that they don't, because if they were to act against the US government, they would make enemies with the US government because they're not the same thing. They do not represent them. They do not work for them. They are independent.
But the risk is just not worth the beef between the U.S. government and the Justice Gang.
They are independent entirely because they are a corporate super team. Superman, however, could be seen as representing the US government because he's not reprimanded by the US government for what he does, even though it seems like the Justice Gang feels like they would have been reprimanded if they did something like this. So that actually makes it look more like Superman is acting within the confines of the interest of the United States. By relying on him, it reinforces that notion. That is the entire problem with them doing nothing regarding the hammer that was just made in the video and reiterated by me. Man, this second point's gotta be great.
Part 2 is even more damning. If the Justice Gang tried to get involved, Ultraman would fucking one-shot them. So Maxwell Lord would advise against fighting the Hammer directly. If Superman is struggling to face this guy, then ends up losing the fight, sending the Justice Gang wouldn't actually stop him. He would kill them all very quickly. This is an argument you can make for other metahumans out there, since he's also harping on this. How do we know that there are metahumans powerful enough to even stand a chance against the Hammer? Superman is implied to be the most powerful, to a seemingly exceptional degree. And even if there were metahumans powerful enough to stand a chance against the Hammer, how do you know they're in the same city? How do you know they're even on the same planet right now? How do you even know that they're willing to risk their private identities or their own safety to deal with something that Superman is handling? You don't have specifics, yet you're criticizing their absence as if you do have specifics. And given that this movie is about Superman and not what every other metahuman is doing in their spare time, they're not obligated to dive into this in detail. They only need to provide what's relevant to the story and what's needed to understand it.
So the argument here is that the other heroes are just too pussy to go fight Ultraman. That's some great world building for this world of heroes. No, you know, on top of that, it makes no sense for other reasons because we never see any gauge of Superman's relative power with the other heroes. In fact, the other heroes barely struggle with anything in this movie. They don't have that hard of a time. You have the kaiju that Superman fights, and he has a bit of trouble with it. He doesn't just completely destroy it. But when the Justice Gang shows up, they don't struggle with it easier. They don't seem to have any harder of a time than Superman did, and then they kill it. Furthermore, we see Green Lantern go and take care of everything in Baravia, and then Hawkgirl does the same thing. We see Mr. Terrific have a great showing where the Raptors can't do anything to him just like they can't do anything to Superman. Where are we getting the idea that Ultraman would one-shot these guys? I guess you must be getting that from other pop culture references from knowing stuff about the superheroes. Well, let's talk about that then, because I'm a comic book guy. You know what Guy Gardner did when he was faced against Doomsday, someone that would have absolutely one-shot him and basically did? When he was beaten half to death and his eyes were swollen shut because of the ass kicking he took, he just told someone to hold his hand and point it at Doomsday so he could keep blasting the bastard.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
If this guy in this universe is even 1% the Ultra Chad that comic book Guy Gardner is, best of the Earth Green Lanterns, yeah, there's no way he would just go, oh no, I'm scared that Ultraman's gonna one-shot me because he beat up Superman. Guy Gardner would see that as a challenge to go take out this guy and prove that the Justice Gang doesn't need Superman to save Metropolis all of the time. What are we talking about? Everything you just said is basically just headcanon. And yes, before anyone says anything, I know Mr. Terrific gets one shot in the fight by Ultraman and Engineer slamming into him and Superman, but that's when Terrific and Superman are having a conversation and he gets blindsided. This is talking about the entire Justice Gang going in prepared to surprise attack Ultraman, the exact opposite of the situation.
Meanwhile, meanwhile, a few miles down the road, still in view of the city, the Hammer of Baravia lands at a small campsite. The campsite is owned by LuthorCorp, which we know because there's a big fucking flag that says LuthorCorp waving above the camp, meaning that nobody is bothering to track a very distinctive evilman in a very distinctive suit who just attacked that city right over there. I don't think I believe you, movie.
Track him with what? Nobody slapped a tracer on him, no metahumans caught up with him, and the only cameras within the site would be owned by Lex Luthor.
Track him with what? How about starting with eyes? Metropolis is still visible from the camp. It would take like a pair of binoculars to see the hammer touch down there. On top of that, we've got satellite technology. For fuck's sake, we in the real world can see shit from orbit with satellites, and this movie takes place in a crazy future sci-fi world with DC tech universe stuff in it. And we know that there's crazy technology that even the government has thanks to Peacemaker season 1 and 2. Also, thank God the US government doesn't keep any tabs on Luthor's base over there, where he has crazy high-end planet-wide top-notch tech and military-grade hardware like the Raptors, because if they did, they'd easily see the Hammer of Barovia fly in casually. Same thing goes for any journalist investigating the site, any snooping citizen with a drone camera, or fucking hikers with a cell phone. Lex Luthor's OPSEC in this movie is worse than Otterly Noah's.
But hold on, doesn't that mean Lex Luthor is able to build teleportation portals? That seems like some pretty advanced technology to be introducing in your first movie.
So a first movie is not allowed to introduce highly advanced technology? Platoon, you prefaced this video by saying you'd make objective arguments. Saying the movie has advanced technology is not an objective argument. It's a remark on what it's doing without elaborating as to why this is actually detrimental to the story.
You're getting a whoosh for this one, even though I feel like this is almost a bad faith argument, because a simple good faith argument here is that the technology is extremely powerful and versatile. So introducing into the setting so early on means it's something you have to account for going forward, which can complicate a lot of story writing. That's not a hard concept to follow.
And this entire bit culminates in the Hammer of Barovia being revealed as Ultraman, who is working for Lex, who was masquerading as a foreign metahuman in order to conduct a false flag attack. So, this establishes that Lex is stupidly rich, and that he has a stupidly advanced set of technologies, and that he has his own private superhero who can beat Superman, and crucially, that he is quite happy to break the law and commit treason in aid of his objectives. You might not have spotted it yet, because hey, at least it's not Zack Snyder, but the movie is now broken. 11 minutes in, this entire thing is about Lex manufacturing a pretext he doesn't need to do something he can already do: kill Superman. The movie will proceed as though Lex needs some legally sanctioned way to do this, but he already has a superhero capable of beating Superman, more than one in fact, because it turns out later the engineer could do it too.
This entire criticism is broken. Let's say Lex Luthor had the Hammer of Barovia kill Superman, which the public and the government have no reason to see as the desired result. You know what happens to dead heroes? They become martyrs. So you're arguing that Lex Luthor, the guy who is so envious of Superman's attention, so much that he wants to kill him, should do something that would turn Superman into a martyr.
Not a great plan.
It's almost as if the goal is to defame Superman before killing him, so that after he kills Superman, he'd still be remembered badly. So badly that Lex Luthor would appear to be the hero of the story for getting rid of him. So, yes actually, it makes sense that Lex would look for dirt to destroy Superman's image, so much that he would get the authority from the government to kill Superman, while Planet Watch is seen as the protector of the world. Another reason Lex would want to gain government approval, through many steps of the way, is so he appears more cooperative with the system than he really is. It helps him maintain appearances. If you're going to make a video trashing on the movie, and talking down to people who think it's good, at least make points with a modicum of intelligence behind them, because it seems like you're using 1/10 of your mental capacity here, or at least what we like to call average mental capacity.
Okay, since we want to talk about talking down to people, I'll talk down to you. Just because you're not smart enough to see how Luthor easily has everything he needs to accomplish his goals, doesn't mean that's anyone else's problem. That's a you problem. Luthor wants to defame Superman and make sure he's not a martyr. Not a problem. Luthor can clone Superman. And in fact, he says it's not even hard to do. So, Hammer of Barovia shows up, beats up Superman. Superman flies to the fortress. Instead of the engineer following him, Superman Clone 2, who I'll call Reginald, follows him. Super Reginald punts Krypto and then pounds the half-dead Superman until he is all dead. Super Reginald then takes Superman's place. He has a staged fight with the Hammer and gets him to retreat, or they otherwise fake Super Reggie winning. Then, Super Reggie goes over and levels Barovia as if Superman is totally getting his revenge. Superman rampages, doing whatever he wants with some threats issued because, remember, as per the Hammer of Baravia's speech, the Superman clones can either talk or be made to appear to talk. And then Lex offers to stop Superman with Ultraman. Clone number 1, Ultraman, fights Super Reggie and kills the berserk Superman, thereby making Ultraman the new great hero after Superman lost his super shit. Lex has all the resources he needs in place to make this happen easily, because once you can clone Superman, you can impersonate Superman, and once you can impersonate Superman, you can ruin his public image. This took 4 seconds for me to think of. How is this such a mysterious thing to SK? Was he perhaps using only 1/10 intelligence? And if I can think of this in 4 seconds, then Lex, the smartest man in the world, should be able to think of it at least twice as fast.
This is the blonde bimbo taking selfies. It's supposed to be Lex's girlfriend. He delivers precisely 1 line of dialogue to her in this entire movie. He's not attached to her. He doesn't seem to like her at all, but he lets her stick around taking selfies in his evil headquarters with all his evil plans laid out, because Lex is a super genius villain and therefore a complete fucktard.
He doesn't show much care to Eve because he's using her as an object. The entire point is that he doesn't actually care about her as a person, and the selfies aren't even seen as a threat by Lex. He perceives her to be an idiot that's easy for him to control through fear, so Lex is expecting her to keep these selfies private, and she would obey this out of self-preservation.
Yeah, and that plan worked out great, didn't it, for Lex Luthor, smartest man in the world. Like I said, utterly Luthor has the most amazing OPSEC I've ever seen. Platoon is right. He's a dum-dum when he shouldn't be.
Oh, hey, engineer's back. Remember how the opening text established that Superman lost to the Hammer of Baravia 3 minutes before he landed in the Arctic? Well, I guess this means the engineer can fly from the Arctic to Metropolis in 3 minutes. Wonderful. I do love me some sensible, believable, completely on track and easily followable power scaling.
They show you a scene where the engineer can keep up with Superman. This is the scene, dummy.
Yeah, Platoon is really hung up on this one, so SK is right again. I will say, though, that she is incredibly fast. If you do the math for how fast it is, even conservatively, from like New York, which is usually where around Metropolis is, to Antarctica in 3 minutes, she's going over 250 times the speed of a jet. And that's really, really fast, obviously.
This is how you know Superman is an old IP. It was made at the time when most people liked journalists.
Journalists, unelected meta-humans think they can dictate international policy? It's outrageous, isn't it?
I agree. If only somebody had raised this problem in the last 300 years.
They're raising the problem when it's happening. They're doing it in this scene. And the meeting with Lex and the government makes it clear that Superman isn't doing this the legal way. They do have laws against this.
And immediately back with a whoosh. He's pointing out that it's absurd to imagine this has never happened before to set a precedent. And you saying that this is illegal and he's not going about this the legal way as established in the meeting scene with Lex is just untrue. I rewatched the entire scene. There's nothing about what Superman did being illegal. It's never even touched upon.
Clark Kent arrives at work and is congratulated on his front page story. Then he receives a phone call from his adoptive parents.
Me and Paul just wanted to call and say congratulations on that front page story. That is something.
There'll be quite a lot to say about these two later, as they're in what's probably the film's strongest scene. It is their second scene in the movie. It is also their last scene in the movie. But this scene here, this is really just to establish that they exist, and the sum total of the exchange is, well done on the front page, don't be a stranger.
Says, don't be a stranger.
And this underutilization is going to be another major problem, this time on the character front.
Sure, I agree that his parents should be more involved given their importance to Clark's arc, alongside the ending payoff.
I couldn't agree more. The Kents are criminally underutilized in this movie. And hey, that means for the first time all three of us agree on something. Woo!
22 people in the hospital, over 20 million in property damage. It does make you wonder.
Wonder what?
As great as he is, maybe Superman didn't completely think through the ramifications of the Bravia thing.
What, this guy's even from Bravia?
Odd that you should mention that, Lois. Hi, by the way. It's a very interesting line of inquiry, and you are a tough go-get-em journalist. It's also a line of inquiry you very conspicuously do not follow, because doing so now risks exposing the conspiracy before Lex has a chance to exposit it at the audience. Further evidence that the film does not know what to do with its implied history. Lois is a tough go-get-em journalist. Lex is probably the richest dude on the planet. It is known, and discovered quite easily later, that Lex has been funneling arms to Baravia, yet the movie presents it as if Lois, and indeed all of the journalists in every newsroom in this world, has never even considered Lex in any capacity until just about now.
Incorrect. The film directly implies that they're already aware of Lex providing weapons to Baravia.
I'm trying to figure out how Lex Luthor's connected to all this.
How's that a mystery? Luthor Corp sells arms to Bravia. Bravia goes to war, Luthor sells more arms and gets richer than ever.
Am I the only one who did the reading?
This implies that they've already started looking into Lex, hence why they've arrived at these theories. As Lois digs deeper, she learns more from their financial records, which is pivotal information for her.
I have a connection at Boda Bank. Boda handles the transactions between Luthor Corp and Bravia. Yes, Luthor Corp sold them approximately $80 billion worth of arms, but for those arms, Baravia paid only $1.625 billion.
So Luthor gave them arms for free. For what?
That's the $78,375 million question.
So upon mountains of research, she was able to find something this important. It's also worth noting that research doesn't magically occur overnight. This takes days and weeks of looking into sources, requesting information, waiting days or weeks for those requests to be processed, and trying to deduce relevant connections.
So I'm willing to say this is valid and give a point to SK only in as much as we don't get a lot of info about the entire situation with the weapon sales and Lex's connections to it. This pushback makes sense. However, I'll also point out that this banking situation is one the US government doesn't look into at any point themselves, even though per the meeting they are fully aware that Lex has been selling arms to Baravia and that he obviously stands to benefit from all of this. And that just seems really suspect and reinforces that the United States has just no agency in this movie at all. Is it possible they wouldn't look into this? Yes. Does it undermine a lot of believability that the United States government wouldn't look into this at all? Also, yes, big time. it might actually be a requirement that they look into these sort of international dealings.
Hey, and for one thing, maybe someone should ask questions about that militarized camp he keeps just outside of Metropolis.
Asking questions doesn't guarantee answers. This criticism fails to elaborate as to how this should affect their findings.
Instant wrong. Totally bass-ackwards logic. The fact that they might not find anything doesn't mean that they shouldn't ask questions. That would be assuming that they know the plot and that they can't reveal what they would reveal if they did ask questions right now. You can't think like that. You need to think in terms of what the character's motivations are. They are motivated to ask these questions, especially an investigator like Lois, where Lex, who is a very suspect person, has this military camp right outside the city with very high-end military tech and equipment there and personnel. There's every reason to investigate that, and they just don't because it would blow up Lex's entire plan.
In the Daily Planet offices, we get our first plot-moving news broadcast as the TV shows the president of Baravia, Venjislav Netanyahu, who denies that the Hammer of Baravia was a Baravian agent. 300 years, James. You've had 300 years.
What does 300 years have to do with anything?
The relationship between Moravia and the United States has been like iron for 30 years until Superman came along.
Listen, Big Benj, if the Hammer of Baravia wasn't yours, then Superman wasn't America's.
It's almost as if Lex is orchestrating a false narrative to bring heat onto Superman.
Okay, I've waited to this point to highlight the entire problem here that SK is clearly missing, which is really just killing me in this entire review, where point after point after point is misinterpreted or just whoosh right over his head. The Hammer of Baravia is Baravian by all available evidence, and is acting directly in the interest of Baravia as retaliation for what Superman did. He even claims this openly when he announced it to Metropolis.
The people of Baravia will not ignore him inserting himself into our affairs.
Superman, on the other hand, never says he was working in American interests, and is in fact working against American interests because he interfered against a US ally. But then Gurkos demands Superman be held accountable for taking action on behalf of the US, despite working against US interests, while refusing any responsibility for anything done by the Hammer whose actions did align with his country's interests. Do you follow this? Platoon is pointing out that this is a perfect example of incoherence in framing. Gurkos cannot have this both ways like this, and there would be 300 years of precedent beforehand to have already ironed out how these things work, hence the 300 years comment. Instead, we're acting as if these kinds of situations are novel when they would be older than the entire history of the United States itself. SK just repeating what Lex's plan is indicates he doesn't even understand the criticism being leveled here. In fact, he misses it so thoroughly, I'm going to add another point to the whooshometer. Whooshometer?
People have had more than enough time to figure out how this stuff works.
That doesn't mean people aren't going to lie about it for their own agenda. Politicians have been doing that since forever.
And look at that, the preemptive whoosh works out immediately. SK, the lie is incoherent.
Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, it's time for another exposition sequence.
What you're looking at, my friends, is the most powerful being on planet Earth. Ultraman.
I'ma stop you right there. You can just make metahumans at will. You can make them more powerful than Superman. You can turn them into the tech equivalent of the Green Lantern. You have already broken the mechanics of this universe, Lex, and we haven't even gotten to your own private universe yet. Why one Ultraman, Lex?
Because it takes a large amount of people and resources just to control one. Lex can only control one clone at a time, and he's the only one with the knowledge to control Ultraman effectively, which is not a power that he would give to anybody else on his team, so Lex remains in control. Why would he want anybody else to know how to control a Superman clone? Also, he had a limited supply to even create a clone, a process which was still imperfect.
Cloning you was relatively simple. You know, all it took was combing the aftermath of your battles until I located a strand of your hair.
Like, imagine trying to do this again, just to find another strand of hair, when Ultraman already works enough for his goals.
But as is often the case with cloning, the match was imperfect. He might be even stupider than you.
If this is true, then it's not worth the time and resources to use a sample of this clone to try making another clone of Superman, and you're less likely to receive effective results than if you used the original Superman, which again, would take more digging for him to do when it's not necessary for his goals. All he needed to beat him was one.
Wait, did bro just frame it as being difficult or time-consuming for Lex to clone Superman, and then play a clip of Lex talking about how simple it was to clone Superman?
Also, he had a limited supply to even create a clone, a process which was still imperfect.
Cloning you was relatively simple.
Like, imagine trying to do this again.
Relatively simple.
Are you for real? On top of that, what do you mean Lex only can control one clone at a time? When is this ever established? It's pure headcanon. He only controls Ultraman in the fight and only for direct battle commands. Otherwise, Ultraman just seems to do whatever he's supposed to at any given moment and just follows along with Lex, even taking commands from him to turn on light switches. Hell, SK in his own video stated that Ultraman can act independently just fine in fights. You're making this stuff up.
Why only one engineer?
Because only one person was willing to sacrifice their humanity for this, and Lex doesn't have the ability to just mind control everyone. The only reason he can control Ultraman is because he is very stupid. Also, he doesn't need another engineer. You need to prove that he needs to have more than one engineer or Ultraman to carry out his crucial needs.
So there's only one person anywhere that will give up their humanity to gain ludicrous power that lets them rival Superman. Sure, okay, I totally believe that. I mean, that's just the most believable thing I've ever heard. As far as only needs one engineer or Ultraman for his needs, by the way, well, his needs are to beat Superman, so let's see how that stacked out with having only one engineer and one Ultraman. Oh, that's right, he fucking lost in the movie. Good job, Lex, solid plan, 10 out of 10, major success.
Good job.
So you want the Defense Department to hire your metahumans to take down the Kryptonian? After Superman acted with violence against our Baravian allies, I think it'd be worth considering.
Big Blue stopped the war. Naive maybe, but well-intentioned.
You know, there probably was a story to tell which begins with Superman going explicitly against government orders to do all of this, thereby explaining why the government is interested in working with Lex to establish some kind of check on Superman's power and his reach and his abilities. That isn't what we've got, obviously, but hey, at least it's not Zack Snyder.
Telling me that we could have had a different story is not a valid criticism. Any story can go a different direction, but if you can't explain why this direction is bad, as you've been consistently failing to do, then your argument holds no weight.
Actually, he has explained why several times. It's just that, well, yeah.
The country of Moravia has purchased over $80 billion worth of arms from Luthor Corp in the past 2 years. A cynic might say that having Superman out the way might not be bad for business.
So this is a world where the government asks more questions than journalists.
As I've shown earlier, they did acknowledge Luthor selling weapons to Moravia as if this wasn't shocking information. What you're claiming is false.
That might be the most realistic thing in this entire world, but it does quite obviously pose further questions. Why hasn't this cynicism led to anything?
Because hard evidence isn't accessible yet, until the evidence of his collusion with Moravia surfaces.
You think the US government needs hard evidence to investigate billions of dollars of transactions to a foreign power involving weapons of war? Oh, you sweet summer child.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
The argument Lex is presenting to the government here works much better as an argument against Lex himself.
Well, what's particularly bad for business is dying, and I have a distinct feeling that's where we're all headed, with the Kryptonian running wild.
Nothing spells imminent doom like stopping wars and being a nice dude.
It's almost like Lex created the Hammer of Moravia to try making Superman's actions appear more harmful than they are.
Yeah, and Lex's plan doesn't work, as shown in this very scene. They're totally cool with just brushing everything Superman did off as naive but well-intentioned, and they don't care about the hammer one bit. Only the senator says he's a little concerned about Superman having so much power and running around, but that hardly lines up with anything that Lex Luthor did.
So we're gonna lock up all metahumans now. If other metahumans aren't going off interfering in foreign affairs, they don't have, and I have proof of this, a hidden headquarters in Antarctica, and they aren't aliens.
Hold up, Guy Gardner is in this movie. He's a Lantern. It's not established in this movie, but I don't imagine James Gunn will change the fact that the Lanterns have their base on a planet that isn't Earth.
Stop right there. You cut off what Lex said right afterwards that changes the statement and makes your comparison a false one.
Let's look at the tape. And I have proof of this, a hidden headquarters in Antarctica that violates 12 international treaties. Gotcha, fuckface.
Building a space station outside of Earth is not a violation of international treaties, and the film never establishes that they're even aware of intergalactic laws. Interesting how this line was deleted from the clips Platoon was playing. You can rewind the video right now just to check. He excluded this line before making his point. Either you missed how relevant this is, or you deliberately hid information to make the film look worse.
Hubris. Noun. 1. Excessive pride or self-confidence. 2. In Greek tragedy, excessive pride toward or defiance of the gods, leading to retribution or nemesis.
Do you know what nemesis means? A righteous infliction of retribution manifested by an appropriate agent. Personified in this case by an honorable cunt. Me.
1/10 intelligence is going wild here, man. I can't emphasize enough how being so confident while being so wrong about what someone is saying makes you look like you really have no ability to parse human language and undercuts your entire ability to understand even a movie when you can't follow the criticism of it. Platoon cut that at a very specific point. Let's see.
Other metahumans aren't going off interfering in foreign affairs. They don't have, and I have proof of this, a hidden headquarters in Antarctica. And they aren't aliens.
Hold up.
Then SK acts like Platoon is talking about them having a base.
A hidden headquarters in Antarctica that violates 12 international treaties. Gotcha, fuckface.
My man, the entire thing about the treaty was cut out because it's not relevant to the point. The point is not about the Green Lanterns having a base in space.
And they aren't aliens.
That the Lanterns have their base on a planet that isn't Earth. On a planet that isn't Earth. Isn't Earth.
The point is that Guy Gardner works for aliens. Aliens like Superman. He is an alien surrogate on Earth doing the bidding of alien overlords who we know even less about than Superman himself. I do not understand how you can possibly miss this. It's such a failing of, and I hate the term, but media literacy when watching Platoon's video. I guess it's not even media literacy, it's basic conversational intelligence. The way this is presented, it's obvious he's talking about the alien nature of Superman and the alien nature of the Guardians that command Guy Gardner. And then on top of everything else is the confidence in this ignorance to play the Deadpool clip like you're fucking Columbo, just nailing a suspect to the wall with this one thing that they missed that you picked up on because you're oh so clever when you're entirely wrong from the jump. It's actually unreal. It reaches levels of like satire of Dunning-Kruger. That's how bad it is. I can't put, I just put one on the whoosh. My God.
Got you.
I'm gonna rip you in half now.
Superman being an alien and having a private base really isn't that shocking based on what we know about the states of metahumans from this movie alone, never mind the likely direction it's going to take.
How does this disprove what Lex said or make his line nonsensical?
He just said it. Superman being an alien is not a good argument to distrust him unless they also distrust Guy Gardner and other Green Lanterns for working directly for aliens. This is not hard to follow.
Pay attention, and you can learn a lot.
Supergirl pops by for a visit later, and oh boy is that going to cause us some problems. This story doesn't seem designed to persuade the people it's being told to, but it doesn't work if you take it as an expression of Lex's motive either. Why do you hate Superman so much? Well, Superman, he's an alien, and he has an ice palace, so he's evil, alright? Just source, trust me, bro.
When you reframe statements to appear stupid, of course they're going to appear stupid. Lex doesn't state that Superman is evil. He in fact leaves his intentions up in the air.
Well, I don't know the intentions of an unattended fire hose, General Flag. I just do what I can not to be splashed.
His argument is nowhere near as cartoonish as what you just said. His argument is built around the idea of humanity's survival and how Superman's actions can hinder their survival, alongside how much about him that's hidden and could raise suspicion of what his intentions truly are.
The argument here isn't being made that you need to take Superman in because he's evil. It's that he's some kind of specific corner case that they've never dealt with before and is special and unique because of that. But Platoon is pointing out that nothing that Lex frames and bases his argument on is actually specific to Superman. This is a weak argument from Lex.
Shouldn't all that be more than enough for Planet Watch to at least bring the Kryptonian in for questioning?
Why? Why not just ask Superman to come in for a debrief after Baravia?
Because that's not all Lex wants. He wants an excuse to kill him. Getting Superman to answer questions is just a starting point for him to get the government on board with the idea that he can't be trusted and should be investigated. Either Superman discloses his secrets and gives Lex material to investigate, or he continues to cover them up and shows a lack of transparency that Lex can twist to be more concerning than it is. If the government is on board with questioning, then Superman's lack of cooperation can be twisted into defying America, versus if Lex isn't given the authority by the government.
Okay, this is not a question for you, the viewer. This is a question posed for the people in the room with Lex. Jesus Christ, just follow along with that. It doesn't make sense for Lex to tell them to escalate to basically attacking Superman to bring him in for questioning when it's much easier and less confrontational for the government to just ask Superman to come in to answer some questions, especially since, as you yourself said, they're willing to trust Superman so much that they'll sit on their hands and rely on him to protect their own nation while it's under attack by a foreign metahuman attacking civilians. Lex jumping to detainment wouldn't make sense to the people he's talking to, and they should realize that as well. SK doesn't even address the asking step. He just jumps to why Lex is doing it as if that's not obvious. We know why Lex is doing it. It's part of his evil plan. The people in the room should be asking him why they're doing that. It's not the problem.
Are we to infer that the government has never had a chat with Superman about anything? That it's never even asked him to have a chat about anything?
Trying to reach Superman is only a move they should resort to if necessary, since publicly trying to reach him can make it seem like they're trying to work with him, which would be a bad reflection politically speaking, especially from Baravia's perspective. It's much easier to deny responsibility for Superman's actions if they have no means of contacting him, which would be even more important when the Hammer of Baravia attacks America because of Superman. Plus, if they tried stopping Superman after he stopped a war, it would be bad optics to challenge him on it, which is something they're shown to care about.
But the optics? Superman is popular.
Yeah, no, I'm calling absolute bullcrap on that. What's all this prattle about all this stuff about them aligning with Superman or whatever? All they have to do is make an announcement that the president or secretary of state or whoever, the head of Argus, has requested Superman make himself available for discussion about recent events. That's it. They don't have to confirm nor deny sanctioning anything Superman has done, and they can just say that they want to talk to him. Then they do that behind closed doors. SK is contriving an entire reason about why this would be a problem, as if publicly arresting Superman isn't obviously a way bigger hullabaloo.
Because later in the movie, it's kind of implied that he does or could at least speak to the President and the Secretary of Defense from time to time. I don't think Nice Man with Ice Palace is mysterious enough to hand over planetary security to a man who looks like an evil sex toy who has already privately made metahumans more powerful than Superman.
The difference is they'd be working under the government, not on their own accord.
What in the 144 Buddhist hells are you talking about? Working for the government? They'd be working for Lex Luthor, who controls the most powerful beings on Earth, even more powerful than Superman, who you, SK, earlier said the government has no way to control or rein in? Platoon's entire point here is that Lex Luthor, an at least somewhat verifiably shady businessman, that is selling arms in a war and that can make walking WMDs apparently at will, is somehow less of a threat than Superman when Superman is just one walking WMD. How can you not see the obvious conflict there? Lex is painting himself as someone with so much power that the government can only rely on him to bring to heel Superman, who Lex is demonstrably more powerful than. Superman is too powerful to be a loose cannon, so let the even more powerful loose cannon Lex Luthor, who is not believed to be altruistic or well-meaning, mind you, take care of him? Oh, but it's okay because Lex, who the government can't control, would be working for the government. Unless, of course, he decides not to, right? Because then what the fuck are they going to do? Are they going to threaten to fucking audit Ultraman?
I'm crazy enough to take on Batman, but the IRS? No, thank you.
Admittedly, I'm not comfortable with being as dangerous as him on the loose.
Okay, so you'll be confiscating Ultraman, right?
No, because Ultraman can be the response to if Superman goes out of control.
But the... Okay, calm down. SK.
Now, use your brain for this one.
Who is the response to Ultraman going out of control?
Superman is popular. Less so every day, according to Chatter Online.
Twitter isn't real life.
But it's used by people in real life.
Yes, Twitter is literally used by real people, but this is a joke. It's just a joke. It's not that serious. In fact, that is the point of the joke. Lex, Twitter ain't that serious.
Generic government goon says, hey, yeah, we could use kryptonite. But Lex says there's no kryptonite left anywhere on the planet, leaving you to wonder where it went and what it was used for and why.
Why is this necessary information? I don't need a history lesson for each and every detail about the world. This isn't a movie about what happened to kryptonite. All I need to know is its current status, how it works, and for the rest of the story to stay consistent with that.
Platoon didn't frame this as some giant problem. This is just world building and setting up questions with the audience. We name drop kryptonite as something dangerous to Superman to set it up for later with Metamorpho. That's fine, but simultaneously we hand wave away kryptonite as a legitimate threat because, it's magically all gone. What? How? When? These are natural questions to ask that the movie just invited the audience to ponder with that huge sweeping statement.
What it doesn't matter, Lex, because without solid proof of malicious intent, it's just not worth the risk.
And that's it. The government will do nothing. It won't ask Superman for a chat. It won't investigate the Ice Palace.
What happens if Superman retaliates when they investigate? What's the plan then?
Gee, I guess they could just go to Planet Watch. The thing you've been arguing is a good offer from Lex Luthor. What is happening here?
I'm tired, boss.
I swear, it's like goldfish memory up in this bitch. Anyway, that brings us to a third of the way through this video. I want to thank everyone that's watched up to this point. It means the world to me. This has been the biggest project I've ever worked on for video editing and for this channel. I'm looking forward to the part 2, which will be up. Just give me a little bit of time, but I will get it out there. And let me know what you guys think so far. And, as always, if you like the sound of my voice, like and subscribe, then watch more of my videos. Or, if you don't like the sound of my voice, like and subscribe, hit mute on YouTube, then watch more of my videos. Later, guys.